Yeah, dude, I'm happy to be here for sure.
Me too. We go back a while, you and I, on the internet.
So it seems you're one of those, or one of the people in the social media space. You know, when I'm building up, when I think about like how my relationships have built and developed, and it's really interesting because like I don't think any time in history we've ever had the space where people develop these friendships without actually
Yeah,
interacting physically.
that's really.
And but you're one of the people I've always seen, and I feel like has indirectly, if not sometimes outright, but definitely indirectly supported my message, whatever that can
I appreciate that.
be condensed down to.
Yeah, well, no, that's. I'm really glad to hear that. But and the thing about Ed Latimore, culminators, is that he doesn't really have to. He doesn't have to be introduced, does he? Of course, I say that all the time. Because the vast majority of people I have on the show are people I already know. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so Ed is one of the early. This was probably before Blue Checks, but I think you've been following me for maybe 5 years or something, and I've been following you. I mean, I followed you a little bit before. And do you remember what it was, the conversation that we had that made you follow me?
I don't, man.
It was about the Patton's raid, that rogue raid that he did in was it Billsburg, where he tried to get his son-in-law out of the POW camp.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and we and you kind of were impressed. I was trying to impress you because I wanted you to follow me back.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that's something else, man. That's a while ago.
That was a long time ago. Yeah, I remember exactly where I was because you had such a because I stumbled upon you, and somebody must have retweeted you into my feedback when I was like 3,000 or something, and said, "Wow, this guy's a boxer and a physicist and kind of a philosopher."
Yeah, at that point,
this guy's fascinating.
Just writing, man, I say having a good time and just putting my thoughts out there. But what I'm starting to learn, it's weird as you gain, we'll call it fame, for lack of a better word, right? One of the things that makes a person stand out to other people is that they can do things that they can't. And for a long time, I considered the way I see the world and do things, I considered that kind of maybe not standard operating procedure, but certainly nothing unique. And then yeah, there it is, man. That's so cool. For those of you now who can't see this, he just pulled up.
No, they can see it. They should be able to see it. Right?
Yeah, this is great. Oh, because so it's video too, which is great. Awesome.
So Ed, you automatically delete tweets after a period of time?
No. So here's what happened. You'll find this really interesting. So I'm kind of known around the Twitter sphere as a guy who talks about writing and growing on Twitter. And so my very first product engagement is the new Cocaine.
Right. I remember
writing
that. Yeah.
about, some of the ideas that I have when it comes not just to writing, but specifically tweet composition. Well, there's a program I was using to go and dig through some of my tweets called ominously, foreshadowingly so, Tweet Deleter, right?
Oh, yes, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
And I was doing something one day, and I don't remember what I pressed, but I deleted everything that I ever wrote on Twitter, and it was about 2000. In fact, I know exactly when it was. It was November 2017. And now, fortunately, I had just downloaded my archive. So what that did was something really funny. Yeah, two really unfortunate, well, not really unfortunate, really surprising benefit from this. One, it gave me a bunch of new material because at that point I had about 60,000 people, and I was like, oh, a lot of these people just haven't seen any of my content, so I can just, like, when I don't feel like writing, just go pop some in. But the other cool thing it did, this is great. It removed any trace of craziness that I had ever said back when I was a little crazier on Twitter. Because what people do, I've seen is when they decide they don't like you or they want to come after you, they'll go dig. I mean, people. I gave a speech
at sure.
I gave a speech at a tech conference, and these tech guys. I don't know if you're familiar with the Lambda conference that happened or used to happen over in Boulder. And John DeGoes reached out to me, and John was like, you want to come talk? You can talk about anything. I trust what you come up with. And cool. I gave a speech about
no one ever asks me to do that. I mean, is there a more interesting guy on Twitter than me besides you? That's just how high up you are. Okay, go on.
And so, dude, that's not the last time it's happened too. But there's stories for that. But sometimes I give the speech, and it was a great speech, and people really get something out of it. And I guess turns out John had some beef because I guess John in a space of mostly left-leaning liberal people, the programming software development world, he is a very right-leaning guy who happens to be a programmer. And one of the things, I don't know if this is necessarily a right-leaning trait per se, but it's certainly not a left-leaning one, is the year before he had a guy speak at the conference and it was on tech-related stuff. Mine wasn't even tech-related. So, and the way he selected him, he did a double-blind selection process. In other words, he had no idea what his background was or who he was. He saw the topic, saw how he wrote it up and put it together and said, okay, this guy's it. Turns out this guy is kind of a card carrying, like they throw around races just the insult, but this guy's like the real deal, right? And John said, I'm not going to remove him for that. I'll remove him if he comes and he says anything derogatory during my conference, but I'm not going to remove him for having those for saying that before.
What a concept. I'm so glad you mentioned this, Ed, because I was wondering, when are you and I going to, like for all the interesting things and all the interactions you and I have had in the 4 years, is there a cancel culture angle on Ed? And you just raised it. Because I've got this idea, this concept that the cancel culture concept is that no one ever grows.
Yes.
And that anything you say is a true reflection of who you are. And concomitantly, who you really are in your heart is in a way more important. In other words, I know you're a racist than what you say and how you deal with people. So in other words, this person, let's say, founded the Proud Boys, and we know that the Proud Boys ended up to become X, Y, and Z. All right, but right now, what does he have to say? Is he behaving? Does he have something to say that we want to listen to?
Because we all grow, right? And this is I'll finish that up and then give you some ideas about this that have really helped and shaped me. Well, they decided they were going to take it out on me as well. So they went and dug up some tweets that I put out because I used to be a fairly vocal proponent of a lot of red pill ideas. Not that I didn't say anything even remotely crazy compared to some of the things that are said out there, but they decided, but being who they are, decided it was too much. And I get pulled in the middle of this hellstorm with Breitbart ends up reporting on it, and another place I can't remember. But the point is, what people started to do at that point, they started to like go through my old tweets and dig up and try and hit me. Well, you can't do that anymore. And I'm really smart. Like I was smart then.
You can't do it anymore for your old tweets.
Yeah, because they're gone, right? And I'm smart now. I don't say anything. Look, I made a joke. I made a joke one day.
I noticed that. Your cards are right here. I see exactly what you're doing these days. Very close to the chest.
Very close. But like I have a joke where it goes, I don't say the N word because someone will get me. And to show you that I'm an N word and I can't say it. And they, because I'm not stupid, because I know that it'll be cool for like 99% of people. But once you understand that all it takes is that, or 99 people, once you just that one person go, that was some hate speech, and Twitter is going to look, and rightfully so, look, because they don't know if I'm white or black. I mean, they know my avatar. They don't know like I mean, they should, but like, uh, and they clip me. So that was the really happy benefit of deleting my tweets on accident, because I'm just so much more. I was already calm and collected and kind of calculating, but now, man, it's to a new level. Plus, I'm not trying to like do anything shocking, because I'm escape velocity at this point. I've got enough followers to where why would I even play that game?
But think of that. Okay, so on the one hand, there's the play that game, right? Play that game, and the number one practitioner of playing the game is who? Mike Cernovich. Okay, poke you.
Mike is brilliant.
Pokes you, and 90% of people, and you're not in that 90%, do not get it. Mike, how can you say that? They completely they don't get his game. I don't doubt for a second that you get the game.
I have said it numerous times to people, and I say, look, if Mike Cernovich has not been suspended or shadow banned, then that should tell you. And once you understand what the rules are, you play in the rules. And Mike he figured out the rules and he plays in them. I'm like, look, if they got you, you said something crazy. You might not think it was crazy because you talk like that normally, but you said something crazy, because I can tell you, because I've been following Mike. I was following Mike before Mike was Mike Cernovich. Now, back when Mike was like just talking about working out and self-improvement.
Yeah, that's right,
and everything like that.
It was all about the steroids and all about the
right.
The nutritional.
That's the Mike I've been following for a while, and I'm like, yo, this guy. I got a 12-hour ban. He hasn't even got a 12-hour ban before. I got a 12-hour ban during that whole thing where I was arguing with those people, and I said, you know what? I don't know what I'll do next, but I know that this, because I have a plan. I had a plan, and I continue to work that plan.
Well, let's hold that thought on the plan. So Mike is the example. I'm glad you agree with me, of the guy he's a provocateur. Fine. On the other hand, you just acknowledged something that we all know, which is that the bigger your account gets, the more you value it.
Yeah.
And the more conservative with a small c you become, which is good because it keeps you within the lines and you're more responsible. When I think of some of the things that I definitely said back in, the days when I got no engagement. But on the other hand, maybe sometimes you're a little too, maybe a little stuff that would be right in your sweet spot, you're not stepping up on.
Right. And my general thought about it is this: it's all a matter of trade-off and optimization. What do I get for being cavalier, right? Is it worth it to me right now? It's almost like people don't understand something. I'm gonna just I mean, they throw around the phrase "license to print money," but having a Twitter following my size that built the way I built it, which I'm very proud of the way I built it, which is very clean. I didn't engage in politics, smear, identity, none of that, right? That's a license to print money, man. Like why would I? If it matters that much to me, you know what I'll do? I'll go do something about it in person. I'm not gonna like burn the bank down, because that's what it is. Not only is the bank, it's like the best of all worlds. It's a bank. It is like the networking event of the year. I got like the people I have had conversations with, my direct messages. I sometimes I go, who the what? And I'll discover, I'll see a blue check, because when someone with a blue check mark interacts with you, you get it's push notified, like you see it no matter what, unless you specifically mute that person. And so I'll see people who have like followed me or retweeted like my stuff, and I'm like, wow, that's the reach I have grown and cultivated. It's just worth way too much for me to be a little extra cathartic. are a little extra expressive. I can deal with that. Look, it's like what do we learn as kids? Growing up, you can't say everything you want because there's a cost. When you're
growing
3,
up. This is a form of growing up. That's right. It's a form of growing up. When you get bigger, you actually have more responsibility. You are more influential.
Right. I tell my friend this all the time, and he doesn't. He kind of gets it, but he'll never really get it because he's looking at it from his perspective. I've been fairly vocal in the past about my disengagement from the political process. I don't pay attention to, I don't really vote. I don't pay attention to what's going on. Now, my attitude has changed a little bit over the past year because I used to think politics wasn't important. Now I think it's important, but there's nothing you can really do about it. So I think I was probably a little better being ignorant. But my point is that bringing this up, going down this line of thought, is that I have following me the size of a small city on a platform where my impressions are measured in the tens of millions. Impressions, that's odds on what I say. So with that power, I gotta think. I could say something crazy. And because I'm who I am and my life is so transparent, even if it's not a good idea for the average person, they look at it and go, well, Ed Latimore is doing it. Well, maybe I should do it too. Once you become aware of that for me is a big game changer. It's one of the reasons I don't talk about politics. You have not seen me. I mean, I think I tried to put something out there to just get people to poke holes in it, but I decided that was too much. I don't talk about anything related to the pandemic because there's enough people following me, and I'm smart. I'm not an idiot. I'm not just out there shouting. I like to think of myself as a more calculating version of Jesse Kelly. Like I'm not going to like. I have to be careful. I have to be careful because this is a gift. It really is. I mean, the whoever is in charge of running the universe said, "Here's this thing where you can reach into the minds of millions, and we'll get you." And I really think it's like this technology is a real gift. You ever see Arrival?
Ever see what?
Have you ever seen Arrival? The science fiction.
No.
So it's a really cool idea, but the TLDR is that these aliens come down and they kind of occupy the major cities and they're just floating there. They don't like it's not like a war. It's just they put these giant obelisk looking things floating around, and we got to figure out what to do and how to communicate with them. And part of that involves us all working together as a nation. And you don't realize though, it's not as a nation, as a planet. And if we can do that, they're going to give us the gift of their technology, which is the ability to move back and forwards through time. Now, none of this is explicitly stated. This is like the moral of the story. But I look at Twitter like that. I look at Twitter as like this really powerful connecting technology, and we're being tested. Can we handle this? Can we handle the ability to reach out, talk, make money in a quick way?
And you know what else? I mean, you're talking about the external. I used to think about how, there's this science fiction fantasy, but it's something that's not unique to science fiction, which is, what if you could read people's minds? And I always, when I became a little bit older, I said, my God, thank God we can't read people's minds.
Yeah, man.
Because I don't really want to know how stupid I sound. Like we couldn't possibly live with the truth of what people think about us, and also how little they think about us.
Yeah, it would be the worst. It would be the worst of all worlds. You'd find out that no one thinks.
That's almost what Twitter is. The fact is that there's in the Orthodox Jewish community, there's a very big taboo, especially for young unmarried people. But in general, it's a very sensitive issue, texting, that young people should not be involved in texting. Why? Because there's an instant connection with texting. You don't have to be with the person. There are no boundaries between you, and almost essentially it's brain to finger, brain to phone, and you hook up with somebody psychologically and emotionally immediately. And there's a reason God put us into bodies and surrounded us with trees and rocks and stuff and space. Now we're being tested in a different way, which is by not only being able to aggregate, as you've pointed out, all these relationships and all this economic and influential, and in my case, professional leverage, but also we're being tested by almost the ability to read people's minds, because it's almost like a texting network that's going on. You remember when Twitter first came out, it was pretty much, it was testing. Texting was SMS messages, remember? These young people don't remember, Ed. That's what the whole graphical interface is a complete, whoever would have dreamt.
I've said this in a few tweets that social media is the closest to mind reading we'll ever get. But I never thought of it, like I never understood quite why. I but you saying that is a good point, because what a smart person has to do, and I'll change that statement. What someone who is smart does, there's a big difference there, because you'll see this is a big effing problem, and I think it's going to continue into the future. What a smart person does is they interrupt the stimulus and the response, and we kind of get that in terms of habits, right? But when it comes to communication, we have, that's an unnatural way to communicate almost, right? Like, because in person you naturally have like if me and you are in person and you decide you want to start talking crazy, your brain's probably going to check you when you look at me and go, that dude is big and he might not care about going to jail. Some stereotypes might click in, like he's black, man, he might have a gun too. Like all that is going to.
That's right. Yeah, Ed, you don't need a gun to intimidate me physically, I'm sure.
But all that's going to go, so there's automatically a boundary, okay?
Right.
And it's the same way with like talking to a girl. That girl's beauty is going to do two things. It's going to embolden the right person and just weed out a bunch of other weirdos. But what the internet has done, and you see this, and I pull up both examples, on the confrontation side, it has made everyone feel very empowered. And I don't think it's because they've never been hit. I think it's because there's nothing to naturally buffer that. They don't have to think about it. Right. It's like, I don't know if you remember or if you had an experience with this, but it still happens now. Like with online dating, guys will send penis pictures and say all kind of crazy things. And you know why? It's to the point. It's so crazy. Ramit Sethi, the financial guy, wrote an article called "The Craigslist Penis Effect," and and his point about doing that, but writing that article, was that just by being normal, not doing that, you stand out above the crowd. And he was using it to like make a point about financial education and taking the right course with your money. But with this instantaneous communication, we don't have to censor. And so what that's going to do, the people like me, because I'm going to be fine. I think I'm going to be fine because not only am I very measured and relatively, well, not even relatively.
You're disciplined. You're disciplined. You could not succeed in any of the things that you've put your mind to without being an extraordinarily disciplined person.
And that crosses over into how I communicate and interact with others. Plus, I have a heart, man. I never forget that there's a human on the other side, right? And I don't want to just like, talk trash to that guy because he might be having a bad day. I don't know what's going on with him. In other words, I'm able to consider that he is probably reacting.
Right.
Most people can't do that. That's why the people who are tasked with, it's supposed to be this way. The people who are tasked with delivering justice or helping people, they're supposed to be a little better than the rest of us. a little better,
Yeah. Yeah.
enough to, display judgment and wisdom, or at the very least a measured response, even if that response is not measured correctly. I really think having some consideration, even if that consideration doesn't lead you to the optimal answer, is better than no consideration at all, because that almost always leads you to the suboptimal answer. And it's not just suboptimal, it's actually pretty negative across the board, where just a little thinking could have made a big difference.
And, on a similar note, we've got the issue of anonymity.
Ah,
And some of the most interesting personalities on Twitter are people whose identity we don't know, or for a very long time we didn't know. But by far, the most obnoxious, toxic, disgusting, abusive people on Twitter are anonymous. And, that's a decision that they made about how to structure the platform, and it makes a certain amount of sense on its
well,
own
yeah,
terms.
because at the end of the day, if when we move from the analog to the digital realm, there's a moment of transformation. And what we lose, right? People, this is one of the coolest things I learned when I was studying physics, and it's so obvious and so basic, but once you think about the implications to the entire world, I think it blows things up. The only the difference between analog and digital, analog has a gradient of responses, rate of intensities, right? Digital is ones and zeros. And so while it takes a lot more ones and zeros to describe something. Once you do it, it's very quick, it's very fast, and you're in there. As opposed to an analog response, you're not quite. You can't just. How does Shazam work, right? Shazam listens to the song, and you notice Shazam can't do what it does with a live recording. It can only do it with the recorded one, where everything is coded and the music is digital, right? All right, and it can do that because analog has imperfections and has variances, right? Digital is just every
Noise.
time exactly, right? Okay, so when we decide to take an analog personality and make it digital, we give up some of these nuances and imperfections that in really time, that in a lot of times are necessary. For example, ain't no tone of voice in these conversations, man.
Right. The sarcasm tag.
Right, and if you try and go the other way, with phones, right? Well, there's no body language in a phone call. These things are important to communication, but we give up some of them when we cross over. So what the anonymity is done is it's gotten rid of all of it. Like here, this conversation is the best digital representation of a real conversation. You can hear my tone, you can see my body language, all that, right?
I try to set up work calls, as video calls as often as I can. Because part of what I've always brought to the table is my physical presence. I may not be a boxer, but I used to be an actor. And my being there, I believe, makes a difference. And if I can't be there, I can at least come across in a way that is much harder to do on the phone.
It makes a huge difference in everything we do. But we are moving from the analog to the digital. And in doing so, we cut out just important things. We may be able to do a lot of things faster, but I don't think that necessarily translates into more efficient, as efficiency is defined, which is the output is at least the same as the input, with as little loss as possible, but that's not happening. We're moving at light. One of the stories I always talk about, because I tutored high schoolers 2 or 3 years ago, and it was really funny just like hearing their descriptions and interactions with the world, because they're still they're teenagers, and I don't really remember what it's like being a teenager, but they're not dealing with the same little stresses we had to deal with. For example, guys don't have to call the house to talk to a girl anymore. It doesn't happen.
They don't have to pass through the dad picking up the phone.
Yeah, and now everyone just and you know when you become a young adult, now the whole uh a large part, not all of it, from what I pick up from my spas, I guess, but a large part of it is now all digital. Everyone's sliding into DMs, right?
Sliding into DMs.
And
That is,
that's the new thing. You know, I met my fiance 9 years ago, back before it was cool to date online. And but we met online, and we immediately started going out in person because because we both understood you got to quickly get out of that realm. Uh, but that was weird then. Now you're weird if you meet someone in person,
that's something.
which is a weird thing to even think about because for most of human history that's how it was done. But here we are.
Yep, here we are. But I mean, you use dating as an example. I mean, that's one respect in which the digital has come to, as you're describing it, define the normative experience. But then there's the fact, as you pointed out before, that these are behind every tweet, giving and receiving is a real person
Yeah.
in meat space. And all that data loss that you referred to, or what I was talking about earlier, the light and the smell and the space and the environment, all that loss, as well as the fear and the, I mean, even I'll say this much about the fear and the intimidation. You and I am sure, because you and I are just the coolest guys in the world, but if we wanted to have some kind of, Twitter, stupidity, being a jerk to each other contest, it's still that much harder. On a video, it's just forget about the anonymity. Let's just hold anonymity out of it. If you're looking face to face at another guy, it's a different experience.
Very much so.
So now, and it just occurred, just popped into my head. What's that experience? That experience is looking into a man's face, looking into a person's face, and now put a mask on everyone for a year.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I mean I'm sure that doesn't help things. There's so many.
I think that's
You
been
know,
a
are you
dehumanizing
familiar with? Are
experience.
you familiar with? I'm sure you are, but you know Zuby on.
I did, yeah. I interviewed Zuby about 6 weeks ago. It was a great interview.
Okay,
Fascinating
so
guy.
I got to meet him in person this week, and
Show off, why don't you?
well, he's a great, cool guy, man. We had a
There
great
is.
conversation. One of the things we talked about, Zuby's like very similar uh to me. I don't say that lightly because I think that my approach to a lot of things and the way I think, he has a lot of the same gifts that I do. One of those gifts being the ability to just consider what will happen if you do something. And we were talking about this. That most people, we used to think most people could do that. You get exposed to the world and you realize that most humans are very bad at the future. And there's research about this too. I mean, most humans have a very hard time imagining what will happen in a different space and time than the one they occupy. Are things within a few moments after it. Very good at seeing what's going to happen next. Like super good at that. But that second and third order thinking, it's just gone. And so here's the thing that happens because most people are bad at it. And if you're good at it, no matter how many times you're right, you're gonna look crazy because it's a different realm, right? And like occasionally, it's funny. Just on a small occasionally, we'll have I get into an argument with the girl, and I immediately jump to where it's going, right? And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Okay, right." It is the first few times, and then we walk through, and then we end up there, and anyway, right? But that's just because I know what is going to happen, and my conclusion sounds crazy, but coming back at the beginning, walk through. Oh, take the person with you. Now you take this and you apply it to the entire world because that's what it is. And we have this thing right now. and people are reacting on one freaking order of consequences, one order of and so that they don't understand. For example, the high a very simple example of this, the hygiene theater, right? Everyone is using the hand sanitizer. And I'm sitting here going, you motherfuckers know the flu still exists. Like, and if you weaken your immune system, you're doing two things actually. You're acclimating your immune system to a pathogen, and we don't, once you know that the pathogens are going, ha 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 ha, or the bacteria going, we know, you may have killed this guy, but not me. I'm his brother who learned. Okay. And so what you see with what are they predicting now? It's going to be a terrible flu season is their prediction. All right. But that's just one thing, and no one thinks about these things. And I don't mean specific to the pandemic. That is the most pressing thing we're dealing with this failure of human predictive ability. But all things, man, and
why do you think? So, what do you think it is? Is that are we just seeing more? Look, you're an accomplished person. You got a degree in physics, which puts you in a very, very small category of academic achievement. I've got all these degrees. We're mostly spending our time with people who are not so different from us in terms of intellectual ability. On Twitter, however,
good.
It's as if you foresaw what I was going to say.
I'm laughing.
So are we just being exposed to a broader mix of humanity than we otherwise would given who we are? Or are people dumber and more lacking in judgment? Because you studied some history. People have made utter fools of themselves for as long as there's been history. They've been
there's nothing new.
Right, nothing new about that.
And look, check it out. They tell you, right, when you're studying statistics, you learn about the normal distribution. And one of the great examples they use is intelligence. Intelligence is normally distributed. For those who don't know, the normal distribution says that, within one standard deviation, or within a certain amount from the average, is where most people are. 64%, I think, off the top of my head. And then the next over is where 95, and then 93. And the further out you go from the average on either direction, under or over, you the further you are from the average intelligence point. Okay. What people forget is that there's still half the people below average by definition. Okay. And that sounds crazy until you get on something like Twitter. Because nowhere else, never have we ever had the ability to have so many conversations with so many different people and see so many different perspectives and opinions in a day, let alone a lifetime. You probably see in one day on Twitter more opinions and perspectives than you would have entertained in your entire life 30 years ago.
And you can learn. I've learned a hell of a lot.
You can learn a lot, but you can also be unbelievably dumbfounded, and you just go, I don't know how or why you would think that. And it's never something so blatant like 2 + 2 = 5, right? Like that's crazy. That's nuts, right? It's never anything that blatant.
I'll give you a great example. Today, not today that people are watching this, but today when we're recording it, which is September 14th, the story came out that in a Woodward book reported by CNN that General Milley supposedly circumvented the process by which the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the president of the United States, Donald Trump at the time, could deliver orders to the military and tell them, we apparently put some fail safes in place, whatever it was. I'm not getting into the details by the time this airs, whatever that means. You see how old I am. Those of you with color televisions will appreciate this. Maybe it's all going to be debunked or clarified, whatever it is. The point is, I tweeted, if this is true, the way I understand it, I think Milley is vulnerable to court martial. So what do the ideologically driven people? Trump was a madman. Milley should get a medal. Well, no. You don't understand something. I'm not asking for a vote on whether Trump is good or bad. Don't you understand that we have that there is a constitution and that the commander in chief is no one, not no one, but it's amazing how many people are comfortable not asking themselves, going back to your example, could this action have a consequence other than the specific example that we're talking about?
Yeah.
And that seems to elude a lot of people.
One of the things that is dumbfounded and amazed at the same time, and it's incredible, is people will allow an argument made in bad faith or bad reasoning to stand unchecked if they agree with the point that's being made. And I say to people when I see this, right, I go, you understand if you don't check this bad logic that it's going to be used against you one day. Like you have to police your own and everything like that. I got into a really just silly discussion argument, but Texas passes their bill down there about the abortion thing. That is not the point of my conversation. The point of the conversation is that some woman, I think it was a woman, it was some person posted that if we're going to make it illegal to get an abortion, then we should make the father financially responsible from the moment of the first heartbeat. And my thought process, and I was like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. But then I was like, well, but first I was like, okay, how is this different than child support and someone to book that? And I go, well, but have you ever been with a woman through the pregnancy period? It's not like they're completely, it's not like they're incapable. I mean, certainly not for the first freaking 4 or 5 months. So it was a really so I said, so I'm sitting here like, I understand this person's heart is in the right place, and we haven't even gotten to the matter of paternity, right, and making sure that is actually the father. But I brought that up too, and I said, I understand what the poster's point is. No matter whether I'm pro-life or pro-choice, but the point is just made to play on your emotions and doesn't actually make sense. And it was just amazing how many people like someone I think is a fairly intelligent guy. You ever have these discussions with a person? They're fairly intelligent, or they've seemed to be so, and you present a very clear, logical flaw or make your argument very clear, but because it goes against their ideological stance somehow, they just break down. It's weird. It's like watching somebody go 90. It's like trying to download something and it gets to 99%, and then you can, wow, that's an age reference there, and then it just freezes and you're like, you were this close. And so I think there's a lot. What we're observing is an accelerated timeline. Technology does that, and
so are we gonna learn from that?
Are we gonna? No, we're not gonna learn from it. I am a realistic optimist, and even I think this. Here's what I think. I think intelligence is normally distributed, and while you can actually do quite a bit with your hardware, that hardware is still going to be limited by the limitations of the underlying or the underlying software, right? That doesn't matter how good my computer is or how new it is if I'm still trying to run DOS or some shit. It just doesn't. It's not going to matter, right? And that analogy is compared to how much stuff we have present to study and learn from versus our ability to do it. And the majority of people are just not good at pattern recognition, discipline, controlling their emotions. they good luck getting the average, not superior or inferior, but the average person to do what I just described, which is hear an argument, that disagree, that while the outcome agrees with them, to criticize the process getting there. We're very tribal. I think the internet has accelerated that somehow. But I haven't quite dug into how that works, but I'm just observing it, because you would think this thing that allows us to connect with everyone and effectively abolish all barriers would not result in more barriers being erected. But I think they've resulted in that way because our thought processes, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to change how you think. I think it's more uncomfortable to change how you think, because then you have to admit you were incorrect. But to even do that, you have to recognize that you were incorrect. You have to go, wow, I've been doing this isn't good. But very hard to do. So I think what will happen is that smart people will continue to, they'll do one of two things, if not some combination of both, which is check out and take advantage of. I certainly understand, like, what is marketing, right? I understand. You know, once you're smart, you're gonna figure out marketing one way or the other, accidentally or on purpose, and you're gonna realize there's a lot of power in playing to a person's fears, right? That's what the media does. And these are the smart people. Even if the people who are at the forefront of the media, the faces we see, even if they don't know what's going on, the smart people who tell them what to talk about, they definitely do, right? And then on the other end, there's people, I think, who go, you know, we're gonna check out and do our own thing. But one of the reasons why I'm so apolitical is because I recognize, and I was talking about this at the beginning of the podcast, and it comes full circle. I recognize that the amount of people who operate on that paradigm, there's so many of them that they drive the decision. And I don't get an extra vote just because I'm a little more measured. I am still one, like my vote is equal to that idiot, except there's a lot more of them than me. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm gonna use my intelligence to go, man, I want a happy life. Let me let me figure out how to stay calm, cool, and collected in all of this.
Ed, we've got to do this more often.
Yeah, man, it's fun, man, because a lot of my favorite interviews these days are the ones that don't talk about me. And this is a good time.
Well, you know, Ed, every word you say talks about you. And I think it's really great that our viewers and listeners to the podcast get to know you a little bit more. You are so disciplined on Twitter, and you loosened that top button just a little bit more here on the podcast. And I'm really grateful for you coming on and to get a chance to know you. And I feel every bit as much as if we met for drinks, except that no one has to worry about paying for it.
Yeah, that's true, man. So it's a good time. I'm really happy that you had me on here.
Thanks a lot. Anything else? Anything that the millions and millions of people who I reach should know about in terms of like upcoming stuff?
No, nothing for sure. You know, I'm working on. I'm kind of not pulled in many directions, but
you've got the plan. I didn't press you on the plan. You've got a plan. Maybe it's private. Maybe it's.
Well, the general plan is that I have this reach and I have this power to do things, and I understand how to grow it too. Maybe the rate of return will be different each year, but each year more people will know about me than before through sheer will, and sometimes through certain we'll call them black swan events, right? But positive black swans, well, white swan events, you know, like you know, like the next book that I published, that should, you know, really help and grow. So I understand how to make enough money to have the life I want. So it's, you know, how do I contribute to this planet in a way to where even if only by an infinitesimally small amount, someone can say that Ed Latimore helped them out, had to give them something to laugh at, something to read, something to enjoy. So that's really the plan.
And now you sound like Zuby. Now you sound like Zuby.
Yeah, and
Now I see why you guys connected.
Yeah, man, and it's one of those things that I think it's not everybody, but I was telling a friend today. She reached out and asked me if I could share her GoFundMe for a funeral, and then actually like apologize for asking. And I'm like, you don't ever apologize for something like that because I have the power to do something. So to me, that kind of comes inherent with a responsibility to do something as well. So and it costs me nothing. It's no risk. So of course I'll retweet your GoFundMe, and, and help out. And that's kind of the way I see the world, right? Is that you have some power, and power is not the universe. I've learned that it's going to sound kind of woo, at least more woo than me normally. The universe does not like abusive power. That tends to put you in a very vulnerable position eventually. And so what I much rather do is have is try to use anything I can to make my life and the lives around me better.
And I love what you just said, because to use the language of physics, if I may, there's a disequilibrium in and a lot of people wonder why I'm always so optimistic when everything seems so awful. And aren't they going to just take over? And I'm always trying to get across this idea that tyranny is not really an easy thing to sustain. You say, oh, but look at history, great empires, tyrannical. What's the place? What's the time? Who are the people? This is America. This is the 21st century. There's so much energy, so much originality, so much godliness, so much good that you didn't have, that the serfs of Russia, for all of their godliness and all their humility, didn't have. They didn't have a tradition of independence. There's so many reasons to be positive, and maintaining rule, retaining coercion over a free people, I think is going to turn out to be, this is not at all where we were during this podcast, but just what you said about when the universe, as we say, which is what we try to avoid saying when we say God, or, getting to a theological, the universe that God created doesn't like. It's a disequilibrium. It is a state that is not meant, it's not a stable state. And that's why ultimately I think things are going to be okay. But maybe I feel the
exact same way. You put it in a way that I've not quite been able to describe or been able to articulate. But yeah, I generally don't think the world is going to end. I don't think there's going to be some type of crazy martial law. I think humans are incredible at figuring things out. I think if anything takes us out, it's going to be an asteroid, right? Something that we can't do anything about. We just don't have the and we'll still try, and we'll probably get closer than we thought with our level of technology. So on the macro, I feel fine about the world. On the micro, I think I think that the weak have to call themselves eventually, and what, or are they just kind of, you ever read 1984, and in 1984, what was the cool thing about the pros? Well, no one bucked them. Like the party didn't buck them. They were like, y'all some idiots. Y'all go over there and do what y'all gonna do. And the reality, when I read that, I was like, it's not that they're idiots. They're just not average. And so they don't get, they're not going to be easy to subjugate. And then the party recognized that the cost of trying to take control of them probably would exceed the benefit of controlling them. And I think that that as a micro, that's probably going to be, closer to what happens than not. I look at a lot of things that people post on social media, not just in support of things, but in attack of them. And I'm like, man, you realize that most people don't, so most people don't realize that you're being played on both sides, either to feed the fear, or to propagate it. Want to just because you talk about it in a way to throw it down doesn't mean that like they're still not using you. They got you because the mere fact that you're discussing it, you're putting it out there, consciously. And some people get it, some won't. But I think as a whole, we'll be okay. As individuals will probably deteriorate to a point of a little more de facto segregation. But here's a hopeful point on the macro. I'll leave it, or the micro. I'll leave it at this: is when you get off the internet, the world is a really cool place. I'm amazed. I'm a really big fan of kind of road tripping, little local road trips, going to these small little towns around me. And I'm just amazed. It's most people, a lot of this stuff, like the world looks like a dumpster fire through the lens of Twitter. Like it really does. And then you get out and you go, wow.
Yeah.
There are people who don't even know what you are. Like
Yeah.
they don't even know the issue occurred. Like no clue. They just to them they just want to vote and enjoy their family. And unless you infringe on that directly, as opposed to just some internet fluff for good views, and that they're not going to know.
Ed, thanks again. Catch you later.
Thank you.